PhotoBuddy is an iPhone iPad app available from iTunes. As I stated in a previous post, PhotoBuddy is a Swiss Army knife of photographic functions. It looks and performs almost the same on an iPhone as it does on an iPad, but it is not iPad optimized. In this video, I'll cover a few of PhotoBuddy's functions. The first thing you will want to do is to let PhotoBuddy know which camera you are using. Select More, then select Settings. Select your camera, then indicate the subdivisions you have set for the stops. You can use full stops, 1/2 stops, or 1/3 stops. The circle of confusion factor is determined by the size of a printout. I left mine at the default of 1442 millimeters. I've begun to rely on sun and moon to know when there will be photographic opportunities. Like the Farmer's Almanac, sun and moon displays when the sun and moon rise and set, as well as the phase of the moon. To let you know when the sun and moon will rise, PhotoBuddy needs to know where you are located. It can get its information on the iPhone, but my iPad is Wi-Fi, so it doesn't have GPS. I use my iPhone to get the latitude and longitude, then have to enter it into my iPad manually. After entering the latitude and longitude, select the date you want or turn on date tracking to see sun and moon info related to the current date. PhotoBuddy shows you the time span for dawn, when the sun is at its highest point, and the time span for dusk. Right after the sun goes down, the sky turns dark blue. This time is often referred to as the blue hour. It is an excellent time to take photographs. PhotoBuddy also lets you know when the moon sets, rises, and when the next full moon will occur in days. PhotoBuddy's exposure function lets you determine which settings can be changed to maintain the same exposure. PhotoBuddy allows you to enter the settings for an exposure, then calculate what would change when you change the f-stop, shutter, ISO, or filter factor. Press the open lock to enter the original exposure, then press which exposure column you wish to calculate. For instance, touch f-stop, then change the shutter value. PhotoBuddy will display the correct f-stop needed to maintain the same exposure. Each of the other settings can be changed, and PhotoBuddy will calculate the f-stop. The depth of field function can help you know how much of a subject will be in focus. There are several ways to use the depth of field function. For instance, you can enter the focal length by tapping focal length, then selecting the focal length of your lens. PhotoBuddy will automatically calculate the effective focal length for your sensor. It rounded the focal length up to 13 millimeters. Both the f number and subject distance can be changed in the same way. The controls across the center of the display are used to determine what will change when you drag your finger on the graphic. For instance, tap distance, then drag across the graphic. PhotoBuddy can display the hyperfocal distance, the near or closest distance that will be in focus, the farthest distance that will be in focus, and the depth of field itself. You will probably find yourself working back and forth between these two methods. I'm going to jump over diffraction for now because I think a more important function is bracket. Bracket is listed under the More button. It can be used to determine the shutter speeds needed to take a set of photographs to be merged into an HDR image. Enter the base shutter speed into PhotoBuddy, then indicate the number of stops you want between exposures and the total number of exposures you want to take. In my example, I set the base shutter speed to 125th of a second because that is what my camera indicated would be the correct shutter speed for the particular aperture and ISO that I had selected. I set the number of stops between shots at 2 because my Canon can take bracketed photos that are 2 stops apart. And I set the total number of exposures to 5. PhotoBuddy then calculates the minimum and maximum shutter speeds. Since I set bracketing on my camera, I also set exposure per shoot to 3. I left exposure overlap at 0. PhotoBuddy calculates the exposures and let me know which shutter speed, indicated in blue, to use for each set of bracketed shots. If you touch the base exposure when you take the set of shots, PhotoBuddy puts check marks next to the exposures that were taken with that set of bracketed shots. In my example, there will be 2 shots at 125th of a second because that exposure is within each set of bracketed shots. You should delete one of them before you merge the shots into an HDR. I'll revisit PhotoBuddy in a future video to explain some of its other functions. In the meantime, if you have an iPhone or an iPad, I highly recommend getting it.